As digital technology and AI become more cutting edge, the world of work has relatively gradually been led into a new way of doing this. With the impact of COVID-19 on the world's economies, the change has progressed more swiftly and more urgently. The old way of work and doing business is rapidly fading away. In the new working environment, businesses have to be agile and collaborative to remain productive and relevant. As AI, automation and machine learning are becoming more mainstream, the role of the employee in the workplace is undergoing tectonic shifts. Work from anywhere is becoming the norm rather than the exception. With this greater mobility of the workforce and expanding connectivity comes the need for stepped-up cybersecurity. Businesses need robust systems and policies, not only to prevent threats but to seek and counter them. While cloud computing is in its infancy on the African continent, African enterprises need to future-proof their business models. The answer lies with cloud computing, and the continent may just be able to leapfrog first-world countries with SaaS innovation and mobile technology. Businesses have to focus on integrating digital technologies such as social, mobile, analytics, big data, and cloud in the service of transforming how businesses work. Clear digital strategies will help them reimagine the way forward and to embrace the new norm of risk-taking. As the technological architecture adapts, so are brick-and-mortar office spaces becoming more innovative and progressive. The growing number of devices that we interact with are collecting a staggering amount of data. Everything from jet engines to a point-of-sale device. How can we harness the power of big data and make better decisions through predictive algorithms? Stay tuned as we take you on an exciting ride into the new world of work. The MC for the day is Chris Bishop, CNBC Africa's head of programming and former managing editor of Forbes Africa. He has been a journalist for 40 years and has been reporting on the African story for nearly 27 years.
Hello and welcome to this full-day virtual conference that will also be beaming live on CNBC Africa. I'm Chris Bishop. Now today, through a series of panels, discussions with industry experts, we'll examine how technology will enable digital transformation and change the way we work. Now, COVID-19 has forced businesses globally to reevaluate their business models and adapt to a new working environment. What will organizations look like after the pandemic? How will we collaborate and conduct business? What productivity gains can we unlock through the robotic process, automation, AI, and cloud computing? What are the new threats companies need to identify and mitigate? Together, we'll unpack themes like cybersecurity, cloud computing, AI, and digital transformation in the context of the future of work. But first, I'd like to welcome our first speaker of the day. Our first speaker for today is Kanina Mapena, MD and Country Sales Director for Rockwell Automation. She is a business leader in the field of electrical engineering and industrial automation with extensive expertise in mining, minerals, metals, power, energy, oil and gas.
Thank you for the introduction, Chris. Now that the audience knows who I am and where I'm from, why does it matter? Let me introduce you to the world of Rockwell Automation. It's in our name, automation. And this hints at our participation today. We are so excited to be included in today's discussion, to engage in a lively debate on the future of work in the context of cutting-edge technology and modern-day challenges. We are sure to share some valuable insights gained over decades of helping businesses do business better, empowered by technology. For those who may not be familiar with what we do, let me explain. At its most basic, we provide specialist hardware and software solutions that automate manual and repetitive processes. If this explanation doesn't work for you, let's rather talk about the outcome. We equip industrial companies and their people to become more productive and therefore more profitable. We help companies that make things bring their products to market faster and more efficiently. We help ensure the reliability of their equipment, and we help them manage risk. All of this leads to a more competitive operation, something every business leader aspires to in an increasingly competitive global business environment. What does this look like in practice? For the food and beverage industry, this might mean a better packaging system that optimizes storage space. And for the mining sector, this might mean changing a process to increase output while decreasing energy usage. For the pharmaceutical market, this might mean improving traceability in your supply chain for a safer and superior end product. What might this mean for your business operation? Where lie your opportunities for improved productivity? And how can you bridge these opportunities with technology to achieve what we call the connected enterprise? It is important to note, though, that a true connected enterprise goes beyond the use of cutting-edge technology and harnesses the byproduct of this technology, data. Data that holds the key to even greater potential for improvements. Bringing this data together with systems and processes across an entire organization. Rockwell Automation arms decision makers with relevant, reliable information. Our automation expertise is deep, built on decades of experience. As a result, we know how to work with businesses to translate the deluge of information into actionable insight. So why should this matter to you? Running a successful connected enterprise means undergoing a process you have probably heard of, digital transformation. I mention this now because this transformation is key in the future of work and what we're discussing here today. To compete in a new economy climate and succeed into the future, companies need to reevaluate what it means to be efficient, innovative, and competitive. The convergence of digital and physical ecosystems holds the power to improve competitiveness. However, organizations who drag their feet in the journey will be too late to the table. Does this sound like your organization? Rockwell Automation recently undertook a brand-blind study of industrial decision makers, digging into the digital transformation landscape. We found that digital transformation is lagging in Africa. There are too many siloed operations with not enough integration between operational technology and information technology. However, our research participants were not ignorant of the power of cutting-edge digital technology. It was well understood that therein lies the key to improving company performance. We found that the most desired outcome of the digital transformation is improved operational efficiency, followed by supply chain efficiency. Companies seemingly understand the necessity of this progression to a connected enterprise. How can this be achieved? People, that's how. At Rockwell Automation, we believe in a people-centric approach to digital transformation. While technology can certainly connect the dots between organizational challenges and solutions, any successful operation relies on people who drive it. Our research found that companies who succeed in their digital transformation journey are those who actively evaluate their workforce and identify areas for development. A key takeaway for today is that the need for innovation goes beyond gadgets. The workforce of the future should look to go beyond the mechanics of automation and focus rather on innovating and optimizing to solve problems your customers don't even know that they have. When mechanical tasks are automated, people are free to focus on what matters and how they can solve tomorrow's problems today. But attracting this kind of talent is easier said than done. We have seen that the competition for talent is increasing in the digital age because the skills employees need to succeed are often very similar across industries. In order to secure quality talent, companies need to update their employment value proposition. They need to meet the needs of the workforce of tomorrow, a workforce that is evolving, expecting a more connected environment, and seeking purpose in your drive to increase productivity and efficiency. The future of work is characterized by a technology-enabled workforce, a workforce that is engaged and appropriately skilled to embrace uncertainty, a workforce that is ready to rise to the challenges of today's business environment. The intersect of your people, processes, and technology play a vital role in attracting talent. Working with the right technology partner means you can expand human possibility, providing your workforce with clarity amid complexity, confidence amid uncertainty, and courage amid fear. Only then can you embrace opportunity. I hope you enjoy the upcoming panel discussion.
Thank you, Kanana. That was Kanana Mapena, MD and Country Sales Director for Rockwell Automation. Now, the topic for our first panel is turbocharging productivity, what automation, machine learning, and AI can do for your business. With self-determining computerized systems, i.e. AI automation and machine learning, becoming more mainstream. The employee's role in the workplace is undergoing tectonic shifts. Connecting quality data with fast computation services, these cutting-edge technologies and other significant opportunities to improve processes are radically transforming the nature of work. Let's have a look who's going to join us now. Joining us from London as moderator is Johnny Kaplan, CEO, executive producer and founder of Tech Talk Media, a US media and entertainment company. They have an audience in 80 countries for documentaries on technology, innovation and business. From the Philippines is Lars Jepperson, the co-founder and CEO, Tech One Global and Enadoc. Now, he is, among other things, an IT entrepreneur and business adventurer, globetrotter, vegan, near-futurist and environmentalist. Amroti Abdella is Regional Director of Microsoft for Africa Initiatives. She joins us from Nairobi. Previously, Amroti worked for, among others, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the Global Hunger Project and the Grameen Foundation. Dr. Benjamin Rossman is an associate professor in the School of Computer Science and Applied Mathematics at the University of the Witwatersrand, where he runs the Robotics, Autonomous Intelligence and Learning History Laboratory. Pankaj Srivastava is a business leader, architecture, software and LV products at Rockwell Automation based in Dubai. He is an experienced business leader with a successful history of working in the industrial automation industry.
Hello, good morning and welcome to CNBC Africa's The Future of Work virtual conference. I'm Johnny Kaplan and I will be your moderator for this initial panel discussion. So without further ado, let's go and meet each of our panelists. We have Pankaj Srivastava, Amrote Abdella, Associate Professor Benjamin Rossman, and Lars Jepperson. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. So, Professor Rossman, what is AI and why are we discussing it today?
So that's quite a broad and complicated question, but I think in its simplest form, it's just the application of technologies to optimize some process. And usually in our modern incarnation of it, it's driven by data. So it's anywhere where we're using data to try and do something more efficiently. This is obviously important because with all the recent breakthroughs, it's now at a point where it can start impacting everybody and not just something from the scientific labs.
Absolutely. I think back in the day, it was only really used by the Secret Service. And these days, we've got all things like Alexa, Siri, all sorts of things on our phone, which are very simple for us to use. But in fact, they're very enhanced artificial intelligence systems that have been designed, and we've become very accustomed to using them. So Pankaj, how is AI and automation really going to help us today in the marketplace?
Thank you for that question, Johnny. So, I mean, just to sort of expand upon slightly what Professor Benjamin said, I mean, another important fact also, the reason we are discussing AI is also a lot of things have come together, and so this is a kind of an inflection point where we have the macro trends, where you have a large population, and in the context of Africa as well, you have a large young population that is coming into rising uh, from the poverty to a kind of a middle class, so they have aspirations. The industrial trends as well, so you have a lot of integration that is happening between the manufacturing and the global value chains, and the technology enablers, so we can't ignore that because a lot of things are happening around OT, IT convergence. We have a lower cost of computing, very good connectivity, generally low cost of storage, move to cloud. So all these factors are also very important, and they are affecting the manufacturing sector and the industrial sector as well. So when you look at from an industrial point of view, I mean, there are several applications of this that we are seeing. And in my opinion, there is probably not even a single sector that has been left untouched by AI, automation, or industrial IoT. So if you look at again from an Africa context, I mean, we are heavily engaged in the mining industry, as Kanina pointed out previously. We are in the food and beverage industry. We are in metals. So I mean, there is a host of applications and industrial scenarios where AI is playing a very important role already. Back to you, Johnny.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Lars, what are the social and economical benefits of that?
Well, it's interesting. Most people, they like to talk about employees and employee engagement, and in this whole move to AI, move to cloud, process automation. It's easy to get absorbed with the productivity gains that can be done just at the outset of the back end. But really, if you look at how AI is influencing all of our lives. A very simple tool that most people have but don't even utilize is My Analytics, which is a tool that sits right in the your Outlook and Office 365 application. It tells you how you're doing with your day, how you're interacting with other people, how you're communicating, how many meetings you are attending where you have your phone on doing a chat with somebody else. So there's a lot of scope here to change stuff, but it starts right there with the individual's adaptation of the technology, and AI is right there every morning when we wake up if we want to grab it.
Thank you. Absolutely right. So, Amrite, tell us what areas have already really been affected by AI and automation, particularly in the African continent. Sorry.
I think from what everyone has said, I think it's let's perhaps sort of go back to what AI and machine learning are doing today. One is the data processing and ingestion has gone to such a granularity in terms of what data is being able to gather from employees, where and how we're working. I think there was mention around sort of analytics and giving that visibility. So that's definitely in motion in some of the key sort of tech friendly or tech first generation sort of industries that we're talking about. But what we're seeing in Africa today is that actually data that is being collected, whether you're looking at agriculture that is so far flung in terms of sort of the spectrum of technology adoption, or whether you're looking at manufacturing. And so our ability to actually utilize data is there. And I think what's the more prominent question that we should be looking at and addressing today is what is it exactly that we're going to, one, use the data for, right? So I think there's a question around policy, governance, data residency that I think is very much top of mind for a lot of our policymakers. But then second of all is the who, right? If you look at Middle East and Africa, 60% of our population is under the age of 25. 1/4 of that is actually unemployed. So when you're talking about sort of the AI data, especially utilization of sort of IoT, ML, it's really an important question for us to also understand the how we're doing it as we're looking at driving sort of efficiencies in enterprise that was earlier mentioned, but also around competitiveness of our economies as well.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned really the one of the key words there with all of these technologies, which is data. Data. And that's really the thing that AI and automation and machine learning is giving us today. As human beings, we can only really evolve at a certain pace, a certain momentum. But with the use of the machines and the technology and the brains that we're able to develop, we can amalgamate data faster and analyze that data. And that's what's really giving us the keys to working out how we move forwards in a better way. So, Benjamin, tell me a little bit about the future of AI. You're obviously working on it on a research basis, on a daily basis. Where are we heading with this?
So that's a great question, and it's obviously always difficult to predict the future. But the reality is, if you look at the rate of growth in the field, we're sitting at well over something like 100 papers published a day, in generally in AI and machine learning, which is a ridiculous amount. And there's obviously a massive uptake from all over the world. You've got research labs in almost every country, that are frantically working on this. Um, and there's a few big trends. One of them is around kind of larger, more complicated models that are able to mine more insights from the data they've given. On the other hand, we're getting better at trawling and collecting larger data sets. And this is through everything from the way people are actually providing data all the time, to being able to trawl the web and collect all those data sets together. So when you bring these kinds of ideas together, there's a lot of progress. And again, you couple this with more insights from fields such as neuroscience and so on, to build these bigger and bigger models that are able to extract more insights from the data they've been given. So an interesting example just recently is a model that's come out called GPT-3, which is a model that's a particularly large, what we call neural network, a particular kind of machine learning model, which has been trained on many, many gigabytes of data across the internet. Now, the way this has been designed and what it's able to do is actually quite startling. So you can do things like give it human language instructions and ask it to produce code in different programming languages, that would be able to generate whatever you've asked for in your English language instruction. And so I think we're heading now to the realm where you're able to, is from these more general models, solve quite wide variety of tasks, often in what we call zero or one-shot learning, which means they've only been given very limited examples of what you actually want from the system. Now, this has obviously got massive ramifications for any field. So I just gave, for example, programming, but you can think about how the same kind of model could generate poetry or movie scripts. And this is all in the realm of text, but you can do the same kinds of things with images and with sounds, and people are now looking toward video. So I think we're getting this kind of intersection now. These models are moving out into some of the less traditional domains of just pure text and what we call structured data, just spreadsheets of numbers, to these more natural data sets that and data formats that we're more comfortable using as humans.
Absolutely. I think you touched on 2 points there, and one is the simplification, to allow the learning to happen in an easier, more user-friendly and efficient way. And really the other thing is the trying to teach the machines to be creative in a way. So allowing them to paint, allowing them to play music, and trying to teach them to have a creative edge and not to be so rigid in their machine brains, effectively.
Actually, that rigidity is one of what I would think of as the common misconceptions around how modern artificial intelligence works. In previous generations, what we call good old-fashioned AI, things were very rigid. You had sets of rules that would describe if something happens, then do something else. But really, our modern incarnations of these systems are based very much on at least rudimentarily equivalent models to how brains work, and they're much more flexible. They're able to, and in many cases, actually, they're able to pull out insights, and we're not quite sure where they come from and how they're interpreting it. And actually, this is a big area of research, how to actually understand why these machines are making the decisions that they're making.
Absolutely. On one of my journeys for our show, Tech Talk, where we visit various different entrepreneurs, we visited a robotics lab where they had developed some robots and really cleaned their brains. They'd given them a blank brain, they'd given them a forwards, backwards, left, right, and so on. And by the time I got there to interview the robot, he was teaching me to do Tai Chi. So, you know, the ability, like human beings, like babies, to go out and learn. So what we're teaching them these days is to have the same abilities to learn for themselves, and then they can build all these wonderful layers that you're talking about. So Loz, you're a serial entrepreneur. Tell us, how does a business compete in the age of AI?
Yeah, so I think that almost picks up to the point where yourself and Benji left off. In today's environment, because of this low code, no code kind of solutions, businesses can actually develop solutions to any of their business challenges very easily using very simple, almost like drag and drop technology with natural language input, and say, okay, I want to achieve this and this. So as a business owner, we live in a world now where these opportunities are just right in front of us. So as an entrepreneur today, first of all of this would not have been possible without the cloud. We would all have had to invest thousands or millions of hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in having at least some level of compute power in our own organization. Now an entrepreneur can come up with an idea, wake up in the morning, take a shower, and while you're standing in the shower, get an idea, and before lunch you could actually roll out a prototype of that idea. We can go back to the drawing board and re-engineer processes and come up with solutions very fast. So as an entrepreneur, it's a marvelous time. I think as a business owner, it's a big opportunity, and as an employee as well. Earlier we talked about education, we talked about agriculture. There are many things that can be done, and as an entrepreneur, you can enter in almost any field and do something different and do a difference to the world, just out of the box almost.
Absolutely. I think it really enhances our abilities,
Absolutely,
which
yes.
is why it's so popular and so effective. So I think we've been halfway through this session and nobody has mentioned the word coronavirus or COVID yet. So I'm going to cross the mark and I'm going to do that now. So Pankaj, in the age of COVID-19, in the aftermath, we hope the aftermath of COVID-19, how is automation and AI really helping us?
That's a very good question, Johnny. And COVID-19, no doubt it's a very extraordinary, unprecedented time that we are living in modern history. It's a unique situation, and every country globally has been affected by this, and it is a human tragedy with loss of life and livelihoods. And in terms of sectors, pretty much there is hardly any sector, any industry that has been untouched. Hospitality, airlines, healthcare, automotive, oil and gas, everything, everybody has been affected. But at the same time, this is probably the time when companies, should rethink, reimagine of how they want to conduct their business going forward. Because like any tragedy, any situation like this, it actually leads to certain new opportunities. So, one of the things that we have been observing is a lot of large corporations and even smaller ones, who have that vision, have started maybe undertaking the digital transformation journey, or if they were already doing it in the past few years, they have taken this opportunity to accelerate that journey. Pretty much everybody, you look at this conference itself, it's virtual now. People are working from home. So a lot of things, companies are saying that, okay, let's take this on the virtual platform. So we see that happening. And something which we had not seen so much in the past was even like in a factory, or a process plant that is running. The usual thing was people will go in shift, they will do their maintenance work, operation works, and come back home. But this COVID-19 has presented a very different situation where the staff, the operators, the maintenance engineers, they are unable to go to the site, to do maintenance. So we have something, technologies like augmented reality, which is, it's not new, it's been there for quite a few years, but in the industrial environment, companies have taken advantage of this and they are rolling this out in the in the actual process plant and factories as well, so where you have an expert probably is unable to go to the site, but then you have a person who is actually on site at that point in time and there is a problem. So using augmented reality and the technology behind that, they are able to troubleshoot, they are able to maintain, they are able to make their machine up and running in a very short time. So it's interesting, there's these kind of situations, and how during COVID-19, we are able to help with the with the automation and AI, and associated technologies.
It's a very good point, and I guess we're lucky that we didn't have COVID-16 and it wasn't 20 years ago, because then we
Absolutely.
wouldn't have had Zoom, we wouldn't be
True.
having this
True.
virtual conference, we'd be very
Absolutely.
behind with a lot of these technologies. And actually, a lot of these technologies we're using today, I'm not talking about the AI and automation, but things like video conference were quite dormant. We weren't using it to the level that we're using it today.
True.
So, thank God that we had those technologies to our availability and we were able to continue work and continue doing this. And absolutely today we're talking, we're discussing, we're connecting with people. And I think it's very important. Those technologies are really helping us to do that. So Amrita, one of the questions that comes up when anybody mentions automation or AI is what's going to happen to our jobs. And I think that's a huge concern. So following on from what Pankaj said about automation AI helping us and enhancing it, can you tell us what that's going to do to the workforce?
Look, sticking to sort of the title of sort of our session around turbocharging productivity, what COVID has done is effectively sort of allowing us to understand where and what we need to do to sort of continue the rhythm of business, right? And so as our businesses sort of go from the recover stage to sort of now reimagining what their growth is going to be, we'll continue to see a faster adoption of technology, right? And so projects that may have been laid out to take place in 3-5 years are now sort of at the forefront, to be able to sort of continue the rhythm of doing business. So that will continue on. But what that's also allowing us is also to look at sort of, as we're looking at productivity in new norms and new ways of doing business, how do we also drive the employability question? How do we also allow for the marginalized sort of communities that we have to be part of this new fourth industrial revolution with a new sense and a new vigor and a new mandate as well? So I think the consciousness of being able to understand what we need to do to create the job. So from our side, and let me speak specifically from Microsoft, we've taken it to heart to do this even further and accelerate our investment. One is to get the youth of today to be prepared for jobs of tomorrow, to make sure that those who are already in the workforce today can actually adopt and train themselves for jobs that are coming up, and reskilling themselves. But the third one is also making sure that we are part and parcel of sort of the transformation and the adoption that is happening within the business community, within government space, to make sure that we continue to advise and also be part of their transformation as well. But core of that, Johnny, is to really make sure that as we are training and looking at our workforce, especially the youth, that we're not just training them for jobs that we can see today, but really making sure that they also have the skills to be able to go into it tomorrow as well. And making sure that those that are being affected today, again, are able to compete tomorrow with reskilling, but just also reimagining what the jobs would look like, whether it's the hospitality sector, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's in the tech space as well.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on a couple of important points there. I think one of them is that with AI and automation, there's a lot of unknowns, right? It's a specialist area. And I guess there is a fear of a lack of understanding. So of course, that's one of the points of what we're doing today, and to help to educate and inform people. But it's very important to know that Microsoft, particularly Microsoft for Africa, is focusing on opportunities, education, initiatives for the younger generation. I think that's a very, very important part of it. So,
if I may,
please.
May I jump in there? I think there is also a bit of a false narrative around how we think about the interaction of automation and jobs. You'll often hear that, for every job taken away by technology, there's something like 1.75 new jobs created. And I'm worried that this is a bit of a false narrative, and at most generously a short-term narrative. If you look at what the current situation is, as was mentioned earlier, is there's a large unemployment rate, particularly across the continent. Um, and the way we're seeing these various technologies make inroads into a number of different industries is potentially concerning. There's no doubt that if you want to stay competitive and you want to improve various business workflows, you need to be embracing this kind of technology. But at the same time, that's clearly in many domains, as I mentioned earlier, ranging from coding to a number of the more traditional spaces. And actually coding is important here because we often talk about upskilling people by teaching them to code. But now if we're starting to see the first generation of AI models that are able to do this themselves, then what does that mean for the millions of people that we're desperately throwing into the world of coding to say, no, no, this is what you need to have a job? And my personal concern here is that this isn't a sustainable way forward. I think that we need to, particularly in the context of COVID, take stock of what this means, in terms of everything from work-life balance to general employee happiness, and actually think about our metrics such as GDP, the right things from a human level to be evaluating as a society. And I think, fundamentally, there's the potential to move towards some sort of a post-work type world, or a world where there's an expectation that people are doing less work in their time. And I think that's really something we, as an industry and as a society, should be striving towards.
Absolutely. I think it's an aspiration to spend more time with our families, to
Yes,
not be
yes.
governed by our, by our commerce, by our work. And absolutely, that's one of the plus sides that we say that's come out of this situation, is that we've all learned how to cook banana bread. Everybody's cooking more, spending more time with their family, prioritizing in life. And I think if we can find the mundane tasks to be done by the robots, by the machines that we can develop, that's a wonderful thing, right? And we can get back to the important things in life. So Lars, let's touch on that subject a little bit, because what Professor Rosman said was very accurate, but there's also a fear in some way of this technology, right? There's a fear in the marketplace. There's a fear of, if we allow them to develop and to learn and to evolve, what will happen? Will they become dangerous to us as human beings? So, how do you address that fear that others have from the AI, the automation, the machine learning industry, and how should we embrace it?
Well, I think there is a danger, and there is a right to be concerned or scared even of where this is going. We talked earlier about AI getting into the liberal arts, and you just have to look at deep fake videos. If we want to go on the entertaining side, I have seen I've heard a new Frank Sinatra song that Frank Sinatra has never done, that was built by AI, by putting all his songs into a model, and or not even a model, into a tool, and created a new Frank Sinatra song, or maybe it was Elvis or Michael Jackson or whoever. So there is definitely a concern that we need to have. I think the biggest challenge in that is really the leadership. If you go around the world, and maybe I'm jumping on the wrong side of the discussion really by opening a topic like this, but the leadership in many countries are way beyond what you call the boomer age. Like me in my late 50s, already a boomer. How can we see what's happening in this world if we don't understand the technology? And because of that, it becomes difficult to put a framework around, both in terms of work and in terms of policy making in the government. So there's a reason to be concerned, I think. And I think I don't think you necessarily have to be scared, but the trust in what you see and what you hear is definitely being challenged these days. And unless we do something about it, it can derail. And you opened the topic about COVID. I mean, until today, we are still seeing articles about how to wear the face mask correct. after 8 months. Is the blue side out or the white side out? Is it worth at all to wear that? And that whole conspiracy around that is fueled by a lot of automation in the back end to pump out falsifies information. So that's definitely something to be concerned about. And that goes back into the work as well. So yes, there's a reason to be concerned as a citizen, as a business owner, as a politician, as a parent. You have to be concerned about this, and the only way to address it is to understand and question. We used to say not everything that is printed in the newspaper is correct, and it's not everything that is said in Facebook or in other social media that is the same way. Now you can see this deep fake coming out, and that puts even more question on everybody to judge the information that we get. I think that's more the danger than the robots are taking over and we will all be connected and
Sure.
kind of thing, right?
Today, I think it's quite hard to find something in the newspaper that is correct. So it's going to be
yeah, maybe
quite the flip side. And to your point about the politicians being out of touch, I think we all saw it very recently in the antitrust hearings that they had in the
yes.
US. And one of the
Yes.
governors or the senators directed a question about Twitter to
Yes.
Mark Zuckerberg. So I mean,
Yes.
you're just totally out of touch. Don't even know the difference
Absolutely,
between a
yes.
social networking platform. So to delve into AI and automation, it's a concern. So I guess we are fortunate that we have Professor Rosman and we have Amrote that are training young minds and caring about the younger generation and ensuring that they are focused on this and they're getting involved. And they understand and they're looking at our future, because we can't trust in some of those the older politicians that are a little bit out of touch with technology. I think also setting up government initiatives, committees, various different things to protect these technologies and to assure that we have committees of people that are looking at it and who do have an understanding and know how to direct us in the right way. So
yeah, sorry, if I can just
please.
add just one thing. So today the key words in business is compliance and trust. That is what has to drive the agenda. And from the hearing you referred to our day-to-day acts, compliance and trust is so important. The reason is because everything is being undermined and fragile. So absolutely.
Excellent. So Pankaj, can you tell us a little bit about the sorts of automation that you're developing post-COVID and what you're excited about in that area, and particularly with a focus on Africa?
It's a good question, to sort of continue where I left off on the previous question, So augmented reality was something that was there previously. We were working on that, but that not post, even during COVID-19, what we see is there is a real acceleration towards this, from a lot of end users that we meet in Africa, in Middle East, all over the place, because it's they find themselves in a situation where which has never happened before, where the employees are unable to go to the site to make sure that the plants are running. So that was a very good example, and there has been a huge uptake of that, very practical use cases for those. Another one also we are seeing, which is again related to COVID-19 particularly, is apps around social distancing. So even if these plants and manufacturing locations are opening up, from the country, leadership and lots of rules and regulations, now they need to follow social distancing as well, while they are opening up and operating the plant. So this is something which probably was not so common in the past, because nobody was concerned about that. But all of a sudden now, in a lot of businesses, including manufacturing, now you need to comply to the social distancing norms, contact tracing and stuff like that. So this has opened up a new field for a lot of us, including Rockwell as well. So we are working on with some of our customers on the social distancing, contact tracing, in terms of workplace itself, how people are using the workplace, how the various utilities are utilized within that, and things like that. So that is again, become a very important thing during this COVID-19. And I think post COVID-19 also, what we feel is, I think there is a lot of things will permanently change actually. One of them will be this actually. So another thing also where we are working on is in terms of large assets in manufacturing locations is downtime. So downtime these days, where you have a skeletal staff in the plant, if there is an unplanned downtime, that creates more problems than what it used to in the past. So we are working with a lot of our customers in terms of predictive and prescriptive maintenance. So to predict if an asset, the way it is behaving, the way the parameters are of those machines, when will this machine fail. And probably in the near future is, even if we can predict whether when it will fail, and as well as what can be done to prevent that failure. So these are, I mean, new branches, new areas that have opened up all of a sudden, primarily because of COVID-19. Back to you, Johnny.
I think, John, if I may add to what Pankaj said, I think, look, on your question on Africa, as much as the private sector has actually had a chance to sort of relook and revisit sort of business continuity, what that means in the post-COVID era, what is actually very exciting and really, and despite sort of all the tragic sort of impact that COVID has had, is that within government, I think is where we've had the highest opportunity for transformation. Right.
Yes.
This is around governance. This is transformation around sort of government delivery of services. It's around also knowing sort of within the borders of what's what, where, and how. Right. I mean, you're talking about healthcare facilities, delivery of medicine, track and trace from a citizen perspective. But more importantly, sort of even if you're looking at food security, understanding really sort of the where do we have food in which part of the world at what price, and how do we make sure that as we close down our borders that we can actually feed our people. And then now looking at trade and cross-border trade, how do you actually facilitate and make sure that you can continue to do that, especially because it's the bloodline of all our economies. How do you continue to do that? So to bring that all together, really, I think COVID has presented a very unique opportunity for public service to sort of, and government specifically, to really look at it and say, look, what do we need to do now? How do we fast track? And how do we also raise our own awareness? I mean, you gave the example of the US. I think, in this part of the world, we also really need to think around how do we inform our policymakers, but also have the vision and to be able to go after some of these unique opportunities as well.
Yes, absolutely. True. I think, yeah, you make a very good point there. So let's take some questions very quickly from our attendees. We've got lots of people here watching, and I want them to be able to interact with us to some level. So I'm just going to read out a couple of these and direct them to you. So Professor Rosman, I'll direct this to you. Ashok, technology has always been at the forefront of business advancement, usually at the expenses of manual labor. Can the business minds please provide some guidance for young people and education systems for the way of the future? So really want some direction. What should they learn? What should they get involved with to really make a difference?
So I think, that's obviously always a pertinent question. And I think, the advice is always given, as we said earlier, do coding or something like that. I always think it's worth having a solid understanding of what these technologies, how they work and what they're doing. Particularly not so much because you need that knowledge to implement them, but because the more you understand how they work, the more you can look for interesting new applications of these technologies. So I think the buzzword today is all about flexibility and being able to adapt different tools. There's new tooling coming out all the time. And if you can find clever ways of utilizing what exists in the marketplace, and a lot of this is open source, I think that really gives you an advantage, rather than being set in the way you do things, using one particular package to solve your problem, working on one very specific problem. I think having that more adaptable mindset is really the top skill you should be pushing for these days.
Good answer. And coming from somebody in the education system, so I think he, understands the desire, the demand for knowledge and the thirst there, and how to acquire it. So very good answer. So Lars, let's ask another question. If we are in the AI and automation era, is there a possibility that it will lead to another bubble? Also, what ethical measures can we take so AI won't harm humanity? And there was a last question. I'll read it.
Wow.
You answer all of them. It says, also, is there a need to change schools' curriculum?
Well, Yeah,
So
I
to
think that.
adapt the skills for Africa and beyond.
Okay, so if I can take the first part first, is there a chance for a bubble? It goes back to my comment earlier about the trust and compliance. There is a see if you ask somebody to do a job, and at the end they do either a different job or they do a bad job, you lose trust in that person, and the same thing will happen with AI. I mean, if it all goes sliding down, I think there was several automated systems that has been learning the slightly wrong thing and got more and more derailed. We have seen chatbots who picked up bad words and built a bad vocabulary and then had to be basically disconnected. I think earlier the example of a robot that get installed and cleaned up and start all over again. But there is this chance of this bubble. We can build all of this, but if it doesn't work, which goes back to the next question about what are the rules and regulations that can be put around it. And I think unfortunately we are left today with a lot of kind of self-governance, and the hearing that you referred to earlier is an example, of very young people who get an idea, get something started, and probably doesn't have a lot of thoughts of where this is going. And when this is not regulated, and I'm talking here about the social networks as specifics, it goes into a point where now there's massive resistance. Is this really going to be our future, and should we disconnect from this? So it's like the first bubble is kind of result of the second thing, which is there's no proper regulation around it. So I think that's how I would address that.
So as I always say, failure leads to success. So failure is actually a positive thing. We should embrace failure. We should take risks.
Yes.
It only really makes us smarter, and the next time we do it. So we shouldn't be concerned about a bubble. And I think back to Amrate's point, we've accelerated 10 years very quickly because of COVID-19,
Yes,
right?
yes.
We probably would have moved at a certain speed forwards, but because of this terrible pandemic, we've moved forwards, which is a benefit to you guys, to your expertise in your industry, but not so much to the world's health. But absolutely, and these are all things that we need to be concerned about. So in the last 2 minutes, I really want to ask you, as business leaders, what is it that you want to tell the community out there? Really, we've only got about 15 seconds each, so I'll pop to Pankaj first and just give some thoughts really for the crowd out there.
I think what I would actually very quickly in few seconds conclude as closing thoughts is, I mean, when you look at automation, when you look at artificial intelligence, it's there to stay, and I would not say it's a bubble, because there are already very valid and proven business cases and value that has been created irrespective of the sector. It's not just manufacturing, it's healthcare, it's retail, it's I mean, any sector has been benefited by that. So I think to what the previous comment also was, I think going forward things are changing very fast, and it will be very important for individuals, for corporates, for governments to keep a very open mind on this technology, because it is changing lives. There could be some drawbacks, there could be some pitfalls, but those need to be sort of addressed and move forward.
Accelerate forwards anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Benjamin, quickly, last few thoughts.
I just implore everybody engage in the conversation. There's a lot of issues around various potential ethical concerns and the ways in which these technologies are used. And often, as the developers of these technologies, we don't have all the insights into what's required in society. And so we really need everybody engaging in this conversation, which I think is an important one for the future of humanity.
Excellent. Everybody get involved. Lars, a few seconds.
Yeah. So the train is running. I mean, don't miss it. If you are in business, get on with it and join the conversation. Even if it's just to gain an opinion, I think it's happening, and it's not going to stop. There might be a bubble that bursts, but then it'll start again. So there's no way we can turn back on this. So as an organization, as a business leader, you need to get on the digital transformation wagon now.
Yeah, Amrate, last few words.
I think, look, just to add, if you're a business leader or a policymaker, you no longer have the option to bury your head in the sand and assume that
Yes.
this will pass. It won't. We are in the eye of the storm, and it is a storm that is here to stay. So better to be equipped, ready, embrace it, but more importantly, have a challenger mindset to be able to know how you can transform and utilize it.
Very wise words. And I think, guys, thank you so much for your time today. I think the combined message here is get involved, discuss, do something, build, try, and together we can try to make the world a better place, utilizing all of these wonderful technologies we have to our resources, and really collaborating together as a community, we can make the world a better place. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Wonderful to have you here. We wish all the attendees a wonderful conference, and back to Chris in the studio. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Johnny Kaplan there in London. Also, there was Lars Jeppesen in Manila, Benjamin Rossman here in Johannesburg, Pankaj Srivastava in Dubai, and Amroti Abdela in Nairobi. Now, stay tuned for our next discussion right after this commercial break. Cybersecurity. How dangerous can it be? What can we do about it? I'll be having that discussion straight after the break.